Hello, Dr. Hill and my fellow classmates. My name is Oziama Iheme, and today I'll be presenting with Juliet Jimenez Bentley and Marley Delgado, and we'll be talking about working effectively with clients with varying identities and beliefs. Today, I'd like to discuss my growth in understanding multiculturalism and diversity and how the growth has influenced my approach to professional counseling. When I began exploring multicultural counseling, I already believed I was culturally aware because I am a Nigerian American woman. I was born in America, but I also lived in Nigeria for quite some time. So I've experienced both cultures. However, this course challenged me to think more deeply about diversity, identity, and privilege, as well as the importance of understanding other people's experiences from their own lenses. One area that particularly challenged me for understanding how counselors can effectively work with clients whose identities, beliefs, systems, and values are different is that we may think as individuals treating everybody the same is demonstrating fairness, but that's far from the truth. Um, it does not equate to fairness. However, effective counseling requires understanding how culture, identity, religion, race, and socioeconomic status, gender, and lived experience shape a person's worldview and mental health experience. And I got that information from Sue et al. 2022. A significant influence on my understanding of multiculturalism comes from my own experience as a Nigerian American woman, as I mentioned previously. So I did live in Nigeria from the ages 12 to 18. And like I said, I was born in America. Um, and during that time, I experienced firsthand the difference between Nigerian culture values and American cultural values. And one of the most meaningful examples involved our expectations around education and career choices. In many Nigerian families, education is viewed as a pathway to stability, respect, and family advancements. Career decisions are often made as a collective um, and not necessarily on the individual's perspective. It's more so like a family decision. And success is deemed as people who study medicine or study law or study engineering and other highly respected careers. Whereas in the American culture, autonomy and individuality and personal fulfillment is everybody's idea of success. Um, Individuals are more so encouraged to pursue careers and educations that are based on their passions, interests, and personal goals. As a young person navigating these two worlds, I often felt conflicted. On one hand, I deeply respected the Nigerian values of family, responsibility, sacrifice, and collective success. But on the other hand, I appreciated the American emphasis on independence and self-determination. At times, I viewed these cultural differences as opposing forces. Looking back, I realized they were simply different perspectives shaped by different cultural values. This experience taught me one of the most important lessons in multicultural counseling. People can experience the same situations differently based on their cultural backgrounds. What may appear controlling to one culture may not always be controlling in the respective culture or in somebody else's culture. Um, like for example, somebody can look at the ideas between education and career on the Nigerian culture and look at it as very maybe forceful or controlling, whereas in my culture it seems or deemed as supportive and protective. Because when you look at it from the outside looking in, it really is a thing of support and protection because they want to make sure that like when you're out of school or looking for a career, when you have your family and other financial responsibilities, that you're financially stable in order to take care of those things. So they a lot of times don't believe that your passions are what take you there. This realization helped me understand the importance of avoiding assumptions and approaching clients um, with curiosity and cultural humility. And this was gotten from Hook et al. 2013. Before this course, I sometimes viewed cultural differences primarily as barriers that created misunderstanding. But today I see diversity as a strength. My Nigerian background taught me resilience, respect, family perseverance, and community responsibility. My American experience taught me self expression, autonomy, and the importance of individual identity. Rather than viewing these values as conflicting, I now recognize that both perspectives contribute to who I am today. The shift that in thinking has important implications of counseling. Clients often enter counseling in cultural values that influence how they view mental health, relationships, and family obligations, spirituality, and help seeking behaviors. If counselors fail to recognize these influences, they risk misunderstanding a client's views or imposing their own values on the clients. Sue et al. 2022 emphasizes that culturally competent counselors must continuously examine their own biases and assumptions while developing knowledge about diverse populations. I also learned that the importance of cultural humility is not necessarily being an expert of everybody's cultural backgrounds, but it's recognizing that clients are experts of their own experiences. Cultural humility requires counselors to remain open, curious, and willing to learn from clients rather than making assumptions based on stereotypes and limited knowledge. And that was gotten from Hook et al. 2013. This understanding has changed my approach on counseling because rather than me asking what is wrong with this client or what is wrong with my client, I am more likely to ask them how have this client's cultural experiences shaped their perspective or their point of view on life. Rather than focusing solely on challenges, I'm more pushed to identify strengths such as like family supports, like spirituality, resilience, community connections, and cultural pride. Studies show that cultural strengths can serve as important protective factors that promote resilience and positive mental health outcomes. And that is gotten from Neblet et al. 2012 or 2012. My growth in multiculturalism has also helped me appreciate the importance of advocacy. Many clients experience barriers related to discrimination, systemic inequities, biases, poverty, racism, and stigmas. Counselors have ethical responsibilities not only to provide individual support, but also advocate for fairness and access to resources and opportunities. And that is gotten from Ratz et al. 2016. Understanding the broader social context of the client's life allows counselors to provide more effective and culturally responsive care. As I continue my journey towards my professional counselor growth, I recognize that multicultural competence is not a destination, but it's an ongoing thing and something that you learn and practice every single day. There are always going to be opportunities to learn, grow, and challenge my assumptions. This course reinforced and encouraged me to be more empathetic. It also requires social awareness, self awareness, cultural humility, openness, and diverse perspectives, and commitment to lifelong learning. In conclusion, my experience navigating the Nigerian and American culture values taught me that diversity is not something to overcome, but it's something to really understand and appreciate because they both have their um, maybe strengths and weaknesses that you can learn from and grow from. These experiences helped me recognize the importance of seeing clients and their perspectives based off of their identities, beliefs, and cultural backgrounds, and not necessarily putting them in a box. As a future counselor, I hope to create a more therapeutic and safe space for my clients to feel respected and understood, and moreover, or more so empowered, um, feeling free to discuss and not feel discriminated against or feel like there's stigmas or preconceived notions against them. And I hope to really focus on, the cultural aspects of why they or the cultural aspects of who they are, and maybe why they experience or look at life in the way that they look at them. Thank you guys. Hello,
Hello, everyone. This is Juliet presenting her topic on working effectively with clients with varying identities and beliefs. To touch on multicultural counseling, it is defined by Sue et al. 2022 as a specialized approach to therapy and counseling that recognizes intersecting cultural aspects of a person's identity. So this can include traits from race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, religion, and ethnicity. Sue et al. In 2022 also states that in order to effectively practice multicultural counseling, there must be active development across 3 distinct domains, which are self-awareness, knowledge, and skills. Self-awareness does require a counselor to be able to examine their own beliefs and cultural values and biases. The importance of self-awareness is it allows counselors to be able to reflect on things that might hinder the therapeutic relationship and process for the client. It's a process that requires deep reflection, and some individuals may not be aware of the biases and assumptions they may have towards certain cultural groups until they reflect and seek supervision. Knowledge and continuing education in worldview, cultural groups, barriers, and lived experiences are essential for counselors to be able to practice multicultural counseling ethically. And the key word is ethically. While as counselors we do have access to literature, research, articles regarding cultural groups, it is in session with the clients that we're able to learn the most regarding how their identity has shaped their worldview and sharing their experience. And while literature and research can support counselors in learning about the general culture and systemic barriers, the client is the greatest tool to learn about the individual experience. Skills required include the ability to select therapeutic models and intervention that are culturally appropriate and relevant to the client's unique background. Very often, this will include deconstructing the Western worldview and individualistic culture that is heavily promoted in America. Throughout this course, there have been ways in which I have grown my understanding of multiculturalism and diversity that has influenced my approach to the professional counseling world. Cultural generalizations and intra-group diversity was previously a challenge for me personally to approach in personal and professional settings. Intragroup diversity is defined as the multiple characteristics and differences of individuals of a certain cultural group. I myself am Hispanic, and throughout the duration of my life, I have always resided in predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods. Living in Chicago, it is a very diverse major city, but to this day stands to be very segregated. So many of my experiences with other cultures have been limited, and my own experience is not considered to be traditional in regards to belief, religion, and family dynamics. In my personal and educational journey, I have crossed paths with diverse individuals and have come to appreciate the similarities and differences of our cultures. Most importantly, I have learned that the lack of experiences with diverse individuals can hinder my ability in the future to connect with clients authentically. As individuals share their experience, it's important that I validate their feelings and do not impose my own thoughts or suggestions to their experiences. A counselor's limitations are their own responsibility, and lacking knowledge or skill requires effort, continuing education, and professional support. In my personal life, I will continue to seek these multicultural relationships to ensure that I am working on these biases that I may have, and also to just broaden my horizons. As a counselor in training, I have come to learn that having generalizations about an individual's experience based on aspects of their identity can be harmful. Belonging to a certain ethnic or cultural group does not equate to individuals having a shared experience when there are intersecting factors including socioeconomic status, religious views, and culture that contribute to their identity. As a counselor in training, it is important to remember to adhere to the professional standards, especially when it comes to multicultural counseling. According to the American Counseling Association in 2014, also known as the ACA, ethical and competent multicultural counseling is rooted in understanding diverse cultural backgrounds, avoiding imposing personal values, and providing culturally responsive care that is non-discriminatory. In order for counselors to be able to achieve this, they must be well-versed in non-discrimination and be aware of their own biases. Discrimination can be based on age, culture, disability, sex, race, religion, sexual orientation, language, and socioeconomic status. I think it's also very important to mention that in today's political climate, it's especially important to ensure that there is no discrimination of clients based on immigration status. Counselors should take the time to recognize their own cultural values, beliefs, and biases, and ensure that these do not negatively impact the counseling relationship or lead to imposition of personal values onto the client. Another professional standard with multicultural counseling relates to understanding diverse backgrounds. This requires counselors to actively work to understand the environments of the clients they serve. This is essential to tailoring effective interventions. At times, this may look like shifting from an individualistic view to collectivistic depending on the client's culture. Counselors with limited knowledge in these diverse backgrounds should seek supervision and remember that the client is the expert on their own experience. The whole point of the counseling relationship is to benefit the client at the end of the day. So any impositions are considered to be inappropriate and should be avoided at all costs. Working effectively with clients with varying identities and beliefs requires a counselor to embody cultural humility and cultural competence. Empathy and affirmation in the counseling relationship is necessary to honor the unique, interesting identities of every client. Cultural humility is rooted in having a growth mindset. Counselors should approach their gaps in knowledge with the willingness to learn from the client directly about their experience and worldview. To provide holistic and culturally attuned care, to every individual, counselors must not make general assumptions about clients based on their demographics. Overall, this professional guideline revolves around the personal efforts of a counselor. Literature and research can support counselors in identifying the systemic barriers a certain cultural group may face. Similarly, research does support the demonstration that cultural competency directly improves therapeutic outcomes and is useful in identifying successful evidence-based approaches with diverse populations. The counseling relationship should be interactive and include the client in the process as much as possible.
When learning to work effectively with clients with varying identities and beliefs, it is important for counselors to engage in advocacy and build respectful relationships. This makes me consider, what does it truly mean to see another person? Not just to hear their words, but to understand their experiences that form their identity, beliefs, and systems that have shaped their lives. As counselors, we work with people from many different backgrounds. Our clients may differ from us in race, ethnicity, religion, spirituality, age, gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, ability, political beliefs, and countless other aspects of identity. These differences can enrich the counseling relationship, but also challenge us to think beyond our own experiences and assumptions. To work effectively with clients who hold varying identities and beliefs, counselors must do more than provide empathy and active listening. We must engage in advocacy and cultivate respectful relationships that honor the dignity and lived experiences of every client we meet. According to Su et al. 2020, multicultural counseling competence involves awareness of our own cultural identities and biases, understanding the worldviews of our clients, and developing culturally appropriate intervention skills. This can help us from imposing our own bias and recognizing where we may need to learn more in the future in order to create effective counseling relationships. Respectful relationships begin with cultural humility. Cultural humility recognizes that no counselor can ever become an expert in another person's life experience. Instead, we approach clients with curiosity, openness, and a willingness to learn from their perspective, rather than assume from what we may already believe to know based off of our experience. We let the client be the expert on their own lives. Imagine a client who identifies strongly with their religious faith. Another client may identify as atheist, yet another client may be questioning their spiritual beliefs altogether. This means that our role is not to judge or persuade accidentally or purposefully. Our responsibility is to create a safe space for all where they feel respected and understood, especially since they may not have that outside of our sessions. When a client feels safe enough to bring their full identity into the counseling session, trust develops, and that's when we will know whether or not the client feels respected. Respect alone sometimes cannot be enough. Counselors must also recognize how social systems can impact the lives of their clients. Many individuals face barriers related to discrimination, prejudice, poverty, ableism, racism, sexism, ageism, or other forms of oppression. These challenges do not stay outside of the counseling office. They often contribute to stress, trauma, anxiety, depression, and other mental health concerns. This is where we could use advocacy. The counseling profession has increasingly recognized that mental health is connected to social justice. Ratz and Greenleaf 2018 explained that counselors have an ethical responsibility to advocate for their clients when systematic barriers negatively affect their well-being. Advocacy means helping clients access resources, amplify their voices, and working to address inequities that contribute to the distress. We can also use advocacy at multiple levels. At the micro level, counselors can advocate directly for individual clients. For instance, we may help a client locate affordable housing, connect with community services, or navigate educational or healthcare systems. At the meso level, counselors collaborate with schools, organizations, and communities, so we can come into contact with communities that may be in their area and learn ways that the client can be helped. They may provide consultations or create culturally responsive programs. At the macro level, counselors engage in broader social change efforts. This may include supporting policy reform, conducting research, or promoting awareness. At the same time, advocacy must be done respectfully. One misconception is that advocacy means speaking for clients, when in reality, effective advocacy often means empowering clients to speak for themselves. We can help clients find their own voice and advocate for themselves, making the client relationship and counselor relationship stronger, as we can find ways to advocate together to show the client they are not alone. We can do this by asking, what support would be most helpful to you? What barriers are you experiencing? Or how can I assist you in reaching your goals? This allows for the client's autonomy. Working effectively with clients of varying identities and beliefs also requires ongoing self-reflection. Counselors must continually educate themselves and examine their own assumptions, biases, and cultural perspectives. Even though we may have our own cultural experience, that does not mean that just because we come from the same city or even may have the same race, ethnicity, that does not mean that we have the right to compare, because everyone has their own experiences, which is why it is important to always be open and listen. The process can sometimes feel uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Growth often begins with self-awareness. When we as counselors commit to lifelong learning, cultural humility, and advocacy, we become better equipped to serve increasingly diverse communities. So again, what does it mean to truly see another person? For counselors, it means recognizing that every client carries a unique story, and it means honoring their identities and beliefs without judgment. We can understand how social systems influence their experiences, and it means using our skills, knowledge, and influence to advocate for equity and access when barriers stand in their way. When we combine cultural humility and meaningful advocacy, we can help create a profession and a society where every individual feels seen, heard, and valued.